Today possibly was the very best time. For over an hour, there was gold constantly. It was like Christmas forever. I enjoyed every second of it.
Dustin Hurt is standing over a deadly whitewater dive hole that most miners would never dare to enter. Hidden beneath the roaring current and a giant boulder lies a secret that could be worth as much as $23 million in gold. For decades, people believed McKinley Creek had already given up all its riches. They were convinced the old miners had taken everything that mattered, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Now, Dustin and his crew are risking everything to reach a place no one has successfully explored in over a century. One mistake in these violent rapids could end the expedition in seconds. Yet the closer they get to the bedrock, the more impossible the discovery becomes. Could this be the greatest gold strike ever uncovered beneath McKinley Creek, or will the river claim another team of treasure hunters? Stay with us until the very end, because what Dustin uncovers beneath the raging water is something almost no one expected. Buried beneath the roaring rapids of a deadly whitewater dive hole lies a hidden deposit of gold that has remained untouched for centuries. Enormous boulders have sealed it away, making it one of the most difficult places any miner has ever attempted to reach. Today, you'll see how Dustin Hurt and his crew fought against impossible odds in pursuit of a discovery that could rewrite the history of gold mining. But reaching that treasure is anything but easy. The river has a mind of its own, and every second spent underwater is a battle for survival. While most miners are satisfied searching for tiny flakes near the surface, Dustin is chasing a fortune estimated at nearly $23 million buried deep beneath the bedrock. The pressure is enormous because a single mistake with the crew's heavy-duty blasting equipment could destroy months of work, or worse, put lives at risk. As the team pushes deeper into the dive hole, something unexpected begins to appear beneath the riverbed. "I've got something down here. Nugget, bring it up." When the gold finally reaches the surface, the reaction says it all. Holy crap! It is the kind of discovery that many miners spend an entire lifetime dreaming about. For the past 4 years, Dustin and his crew have fought freezing temperatures, violent currents, and relentless setbacks at McKinley Creek. Throughout that time, nearly everyone told them they were wasting their effort. According to local stories, the old-time miners had already stripped the creek of every valuable ounce of gold more than a century ago, leaving behind nothing but gravel and dust. But those stories overlooked one critical fact. The miners of the past never had the equipment or the willingness to enter the deadly whitewater dive hole where the richest gold had settled. Dustin believed the real treasure had remained hidden beneath the bedrock all along, and now he finally had proof. The dive hole itself is nearly 8 feet deep and unbelievably dangerous. Powerful currents churn the water non-stop, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Even under those brutal conditions, the crew refuses to quit. During their latest dive, they recovered several chunky gold nuggets that looked more like museum pieces than ordinary placer gold. Back at camp, Dustin and Wes began processing the concentrates they had collected over the previous 2 weeks. Excitement filled the air as they prepared for the cleanup. Then Carlos walked into camp. Unable to resist having some fun, Dustin and Wes convinced him the cleanup had been a complete failure. Carlos couldn't believe it. After everything the crew had gone through, the story simply didn't make sense. Then they revealed the truth. The cleanup tray was overflowing with gold. The fine gold alone weighed 6.94 ounces. At roughly $2,000 per ounce, that represented nearly $14,000 before even counting the larger pieces. But the biggest surprise came from the nuggets. Their hand-picked collection added another 7.3 ounces, bringing the total value of that single cleanup to nearly $30,000. And Dustin knew something even bigger was waiting. That impressive haul had come from material sitting above the true target. The real prize was still hidden beneath a massive layer of giant boulders blocking access to the ancient bedrock. For placer miners, bedrock is where the heaviest gold naturally settles after thousands of years. Once gold reaches those cracks and crevices, it rarely moves again. Unfortunately, reaching it usually means removing enormous amounts of rock. That challenge has turned Dustin's dive hole into a constant battle between human determination and the raw power of nature. Some of the boulders are as large and heavy as small trucks. To reach the millions of dollars believed to be trapped underneath, the crew has only two choices: move the rocks or break them apart. Neither option is safe. The river never stops pulling at the divers, and one shifting boulder could trap someone underwater in an instant. The problem is that the equipment they already own simply isn't powerful enough. Fred's Gold Blaster, it's basically a giant pressure washer. We've reached the point where our regular setup just can't get the job done anymore. Realizing they needed something far more capable, Dustin traveled nearly 6 kilometers to visit one of the mountain's most respected mining veterans, a man everyone knows as One-Eyed Mark. Mark has earned a legendary reputation for solving impossible mining problems. As soon as Dustin explained that an enormous boulder had defeated every winch and cable they owned, Mark immediately knew what was needed. Without hesitation, he introduced Dustin to a specialized underwater rock blasting system designed to fracture even the toughest stone. It was exactly the breakthrough the crew had been searching for. But bringing explosives into a raging whitewater river introduces an entirely new level of danger. The crew is about to learn that breaking through solid rock may be the easy part. Surviving what comes next is a completely different challenge. Blasting apart a massive underwater boulder isn't as simple as dropping in explosives and hoping for the best. Every step demands careful planning and absolute precision. To make it happen, Dustin brought in a specialized cordless drill designed for underwater work. But before it could even touch the riverbed, the tool needed to be pressurized correctly. That detail was more important than it sounded. As a diver descends, increasing water pressure constantly pushes against the drill. If the pressure inside the tool is too low, water seeps into the motor and destroys its electrical components. If the pressure is too high, the motor locks up completely and refuses to spin. There is almost no room for error. For the job, Dustin chose James, the strongest diver on the crew. Wrestling a heavy drill while battling powerful whitewater currents required every ounce of strength he had. Their objective was straightforward: drill 3 deep holes into the center of the giant boulder, insert the blasting cartridges, and split the rock apart. But the river had different plans. The moment James reached the bottom, the rushing current began pushing him off balance. One hand struggled to steady the drill, while the other fought to keep his body planted on the riverbed. Then, halfway through drilling the second hole, everything stopped. The drill suddenly went silent. With no functioning drill, the entire operation came to a standstill. Without those holes, there was no way to place the charges. Assuming the motor had failed, Dustin brought the tool back to the surface. Then something unexpected happened. The drill powered back on, as if nothing had ever been wrong. The problem wasn't mechanical at all. The crew had accidentally overpressurized the drill to 6.2 bars. For comparison, a typical car tire carries only about 2.3 to 2.5 bars of pressure. At a diving depth of roughly 3 meters, the drill needed far less. The excessive pressure created so much internal friction that the seals overheated, activating the motor's safety protection. Carlos quickly released the excess air, adjusted the pressure to the proper setting, and prepared the drill for another attempt. This time, James returned to the bottom, ready to finish what he had started. What makes this mining technique so fascinating is that success doesn't depend on massive explosions. Instead, it relies on directing a small amount of energy with incredible accuracy. Each drilled hole received a tightly fitted primer charge. When activated, an electrical signal traveled to the detonator, igniting the charge at the deepest point inside the rock. I've got one that's buried pretty deep. There's a lot of material packed around it. I'm not sure I'll get it loose. I think I need the Gold Blaster underneath it. Because the pressure remained trapped inside the solid stone, the force had only one direction to escape: outward. In an instant, the boulder fractured from the inside, breaking apart like shattered glass. Everyone stepped back while the crew prepared for the first underwater blast ever attempted in this section of the creek. Then the trigger was pulled. The explosion sent a powerful shock through the ground. Even from a safe distance, James admitted the blast was much stronger than he had anticipated. As the cloud of bubbles slowly disappeared, the crew finally saw the result. The enormous rock that had blocked their progress for weeks had split cleanly into 3 manageable sections. For the first time, the route to the gold-bearing bedrock was finally open. The long-awaited treasure suddenly felt closer than ever. But the greatest challenge was still waiting below. Diving in McKinley Creek is nothing like exploring calm water. The river is relentless. The current is powerful enough to rip equipment away from a diver without warning, turning every minute underwater into a test of endurance. James spent nearly 5 hours on the bottom, surrounded by darkness while struggling to maintain his footing against the force of the rushing water. Using a large suction hose, he vacuumed gravel from the bedrock. Every so often, he heard the unmistakable metallic click of a gold nugget striking the inside of the pipe. For a miner, few sounds are more satisfying. Above the surface, the rest of the crew constantly monitored James's breathing system, communication lines, and safety cables, while clearing away the shattered remains of the blasted boulder. Even broken apart, each section weighed an incredible amount. Using a winch, they slowly dragged the heavy pieces away one at a time, giving James better access to the exposed bedrock below. And with every rock they removed, more gold began to appear. James repeatedly picked up nuggets by hand and held them toward his underwater camera so the crew on shore could see what he had found. Cheers echoed across the creek, nearly loud enough to compete with the roar of the rapids. Watching the live video feed, Dustin suddenly realized something remarkable. They had reached a gold pocket. In placer mining, a pocket forms where flowing water loses enough speed to allow heavy gold to settle and remain trapped, often inside natural cracks within the bedrock. Their dive hole sat precisely where the creek bends sharply, a perfect location for rich deposits to accumulate over countless years. Hour after hour, James continued recovering impressive amounts of gold. It was the kind of production miners dream about, yet the danger had not disappeared. Working inside a deep excavation beneath fast-moving whitewater means the surrounding walls are under constant stress. If too much supporting gravel is removed, the sides of the hole can collapse without warning. James had to avoid digging beneath the banks at all costs. One careless move could trigger an underwater cave-in, burying him beneath tons of rock with no chance of escape. From the surface, the crew never took their eyes off the walls of the excavation, watching for even the smallest sign of movement. The pressure was relentless, but so was the promise of the incredible treasure still waiting below. Even with the bedrock finally exposed, nobody on the crew believed the hardest part was over. If anything, they knew the real challenge had only just begun. Every inch of bedrock had to be cleaned with incredible care. Gold doesn't simply lie on top of the riverbed, waiting to be picked up. Over thousands of years, the heaviest pieces sink into tiny cracks, narrow crevices, and hidden pockets carved into the solid rock by the relentless force of flowing water. That meant James couldn't afford to rush. Armed with the suction hose in one hand and simple hand tools in the other, he slowly worked across the exposed bedrock, removing gravel one careful layer at a time. Visibility remained terrible. The powerful current constantly stirred up sediment, forcing him to rely more on touch than sight. Every few minutes, another bright nugget appeared from the darkness. Back on shore, Dustin watched the live camera feed without taking his eyes off the monitor. Each new piece of gold confirmed what he had believed for years, that the richest part of McKinley Creek had never been mined because nobody had ever managed to reach this dangerous section of the river. The crew quickly realized they weren't finding isolated nuggets anymore. They were uncovering a concentrated pay streak. In placer mining, a pay streak is the path where heavy gold repeatedly settles over countless seasons, creating an area far richer than the surrounding ground. Finding one can completely change the outcome of an entire mining season. Excitement spread through the camp, but nobody allowed themselves to celebrate too early. The river was still in control. Large rocks continued shifting as water rushed through the excavation, and every movement had to be watched carefully. Safety remained the first priority because one unexpected collapse could erase months of hard work in an instant. Despite the risks, the results kept improving. Bucket after bucket of material was lifted to the surface and processed through the recovery system. Each cleanup revealed more fine gold mixed with impressive nuggets, proving that the newly exposed bedrock was producing exactly what Dustin had hoped for. With every successful dive, the crew gained confidence. The impossible was slowly becoming reality. What had started as nothing more than a risky gamble was turning into one of the most productive sections of ground they had ever explored. and judging by the untouched bedrock still waiting beneath the remaining gravel, everyone believed the biggest discoveries were still ahead. The question was no longer whether gold was hiding beneath McKinley Creek. The only question left was just how much treasure the river had been protecting all these years.